Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus this hour amidst tensions with China along the line of actual control. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh is inaugurating 43 bridges made by Border Roads Organization across 7 states and union territories. He will also he's also laid, in fact, the foundation stone for the Nechuput Tunnel via video conferencing. India's push for developing infrastructure in areas bordering China has rattled Beijing as Indian troops have increased patrolling along the LAC. In fact, however, the inauguration, remember, had to be postponed. Okay, well, a quick update on that. Of course, remember the inauguration was to take place today, but it got postponed because of Union Minister Suresh Angadi's death. But still, it's a mega push. It's a mega infrastructure push for border areas as the new bridges will help transfer weapons to the border areas. Today, the inauguration, remember, has been postponed though due to Suresh Angadi's demands. Let me bring in a special panel on this story. Major General Dhruv Katoch, defense analyst, is joining us for more. Squadron leader Vijender Thakur, strategic affairs analyst, is also with us live. Sumit, political analyst, joins the panel, and Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is with us as well at this point. Professor Nalapat, let me begin with you first. A big infrastructure push by India, although of course the big ceremony was postponed because of the tragic demise of Union Minister Suresh Angadi last evening. The fact is that these tunnels are ready. These bridges are ready, obviously conveying a lot, Professor Nalapat, isn't it?
Well, I'd like to say, Uday, that it's very unfortunate that previous governments did not pay attention to this kind of development. And you remember the 62 war, in the army fought gallantly, but the reality was that the roads were abysmal and the logistics were terrible. So the army was fighting, frankly, in a manner which was unpardonable from the point of view of the authorities that were supposed to provide for them. I'm very happy that at least under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, attention is being paid to this kind of activity, because the reality is, as far as China is concerned, the world does not know tomorrow which part of the world the Chinese believe have been theirs because of some map or maybe some other kind of fanciful idea that they have got in their minds. So because of that, the world has got to be on guard. And as far as the Himalayas are concerned, they made it absolutely plain. The entire Himalayan massif should be in the control of Beijing. So from that point of view, these roads are very, very welcome, and I'm looking forward to more such roads being developed.
Absolutely, and particularly the Nechuput Tunnel, which is an all-weather tunnel, connecting Himachal Pradesh, connecting basically, most parts of India to Ladakh immediately, Professor Nalapat. So this tunnel is very crucial and very important, and it's going to be thrown open.
Well, it just shows what we can do. And it just shows, for example, that countries like Pakistan, which, they got a flood of Chinese workers coming over. In India also, in the beginning, if I remember in Andhra Pradesh, for example, at one stage, tens of thousands of Chinese workers were given business visas by the Indian embassy in Beijing. Absolutely incomprehensible when we have tens of millions of Indian workers who are looking for a job. The Indian worker is absolutely as good as the worker anywhere else. And when you motivate the Indian worker properly, as in this particular situation, that worker really delivers.
Okay, how important, Major General Katoch, is this border infrastructure, for a possible conflict? How important does then the border infrastructure role really play in any sort of conflict?
Your fighting ability is one thing. You may have the best of troops and you may have the best of equipment. But if we do not have the capacity and the capability to get the required force at the required place, at the required time, then we are losing out on a very, very great strategic advantage. Now, as of now, as far as the equipment profile is concerned, we are reasonably okay. As far as the manpower is concerned, I think we are the best in the world. So these are the two positives which we have had. But as Professor Madhav Nalapat has so rightly stated, we have been very lax in not paying attention to our border roads. And the reason was simple. The reason was we really didn't expect a major thrust coming in from any hostile power across the Himalayas. I don't know why this mistrust was there that, okay, because of China's there and there will never be a war or something. But these things don't really work. 62 was an eye opener, but even after that, we have not really paid the requisite degree of attention to building up those roads, both in Arunachal Pradesh and in Ladakh and in Sikkim. Now, while a great deal of progress has taken place, I think, especially over the last 5 to 6 years, it has been a tremendous push, and I'm witness to that push. But I have also seen what has been happening earlier. I have had the privilege to command in both my battalion and my division right in the front line. And I have seen that area and how poor the infrastructure was. When I'm looking at one particular area where I served in winter, the whole area was footbound for about 30 to 40 kilometers. So if you had to move troops out there, it would take a very long period of time. And the same situation has continued for a very long period of time. But now I think two important things have come up. One, the roads have started going across either to the line of control or to the line of actual control. That is one. Number two, the bridges and the tunnels are being built. Now, both these are vital components because even if you build a road, if the bridge is missing, then it is not passable throughout the year. It may be possible for some part of the year, but for a very large portion of the year, it will not be usable. Now, you take an example of the bridge which has recently come up now, the Dharcha Bridge, which was to be inaugurated today. Now, this bridge is 360 kilometers long, 360 meters long, and it is built on the Bhaga River. And this is the route which goes from Manali to Leh. Now, at many a times when the river would be flooded, the army convoys would be stuck for weeks on end. Now, imagine a state like that by which hostilities are imminent, we are facing a crisis, and you cannot get your troops across. Yes, we do have strategic mobility now with the Indian Air Force, which I think is also a very positive development. But you see, nothing can take away from the fact that we need ground communications. And the thrust which this has been given, it is a very major effort which has gone in so far. But we need to continue with this for another 5 to 10 years to come up somewhere near to what the Chinese have achieved. So we still have a long way to go, but I'm very pleased with the progress which has been made, and I do hope this continues.
Okay, Sumit, we are a big infrastructure push by India, and it's not just because of this skirmish. Obviously, these projects have been planned way in advance, obviously showing the kind of planning the Modi government has put into, ramping up the border infrastructure. It obviously connects the border areas with mainstream India, facilitating troop movement at any point of the year when needed, but also connecting those villages which live, and the villagers who live in those areas, who sometimes feel a bit disconnected. So very important, isn't it, Sumit? That these projects have been fast tracked, and perhaps more such projects also need to be on the anvil.
Thank you, Uday. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. The thing is that, what we are seeing, what is done in last 6 years is something which was not done in last 65 years. So you have to look at the number of years. So 65 years, we had this Nehruvian thought wherein we offered a UNSC seat to China, wherein our defense minister, ex-defense minister, Mr. A.K. Antony, on record and on parliament says unsecured borders are the most secured way. It is better not to build roads. We leave borders like that. That way they are more secured. But the moment Prime Minister came in, the Modi ji came in, he came with a different thought process. You see, the skirmish is happening today, but the roads were started building quite a few years back. So first of all, it was in around 100 years, no permission is required to build infrastructure to LAC or LOC wherever we need. Second, a main stumbling block was the environment clearance. Why do you need environment clearance for the sake of God for the roads which protect your country, for the troop movement? Why do you need environment clearance? So these were the big hurdles which were removed. Budgets were allocated. DRO did a fantastic job. And now this tunnel which is being built with the bridges, now the advantage of this tunnel is, Uday, now around 10 to 12 months we'll have connectivity with Leh, which was earlier 6 months only. And it can move heavy tanks, it can move armaments, it can move all kinds of traffic. So it's a big, big push. So the credit goes to the present government, which could see a possible situation like this growing up, and they build the roads. So what is roads, Uday? Roads is, restructuring resistance, reliability, and reassurance. Reassurance to our troops, reassurance to the people there, and reassurance to the enemies. Look, we can mobilize troops. We are there. We mean business. We are there to protect each and every inch of our land. This has sent a very, very subtle message to Chinese. Uday, this they were not expecting in the last 65 years. For 65 years, they had budgeted a typical pattern of Indian leadership, which has changed. This is what is rattling the CCP and the General Secretary Z. He had not thought what could not be done in 65 years would be done in 6 years. And I agree to Professor Nalpat and General Katos, there's a lot which we need to be done. But in my opinion, around 70%, 75% of the job is done. Resistance is through roads. Roads are like the arteries which carry blood to the heart and vice versa. So without roads, you can put a bunch of troops. What can they do? We have learned from 62. So that thing will not happen again. We have to complement the government. We have to complement our army. And we have to complement BRO, who has worked in very tough conditions, even in COVID. The work continued, the roads continued, and this is what China is really rattled with, right? This is not in their calculation. This was not given to them by Shinzu. Obviously, you could not think about so long.
Okay. Squad Leader Thakur, your reaction, of course, to these mega infrastructure projects, which, of course, are going to be thrown open, 42 bridges, spread across 7 different states and union territories. I'm being told 10 of these bridges are, in fact, in Jammu and Kashmir, 8 are in Uttarakhand, 4 are in Sikkim. So it's quite spread out. Obviously, there's that very crucial tunnel as well, which is being thrown open. Your assessment of this infrastructure portion, and is it a step in the right direction?
Uday, thank you for inviting me on the panel. The Nechupu tunnel is one of the 3 big projects, infrastructure projects, that's going to make a lot of difference to the Army's ability to sustain a troop presence on the border. The other 2 tunnels being the tunnel being built under the Sela Pass, work on which has already started. And there is another tunnel which is proposed to run under the Brahmaputra, for which global tenders were invited, I think in December 2019. So these are massive projects, and though these projects may have been planned earlier, but there's a lot of optics behind it. And I want to sort of dwell on the optics behind our infrastructure project. It is a very mild way of escalating to de-escalate. China wants us to stop building the infrastructure, our border infrastructure. So we are escalating to de-escalate. We say, okay, look, we are going to build these massive projects now. And that is a very, very good policy, because China is not ready to fight, not as yet. Once they know that India is not going to back down from the infrastructure projects, it is going to think twice. It's going to think many, many times, not just twice. So there is going to be an impact on what China does now in Ladakh, next in Ladakh, and there is going to be a long-term impact in our ability to shore up our infrastructure all along the border. There is another point about this. Recently, there was an article in the Global Times. It was a very interesting article. It just did not draw much notice in India. The article said China intends to use its superior infrastructure to increase the gap that currently exists between their ability to fight India. So what they intend to do is, during the winter months, they want to increase the gap, get in more supplies, get in more troops, and make sure that once the winters are, the thaw sets in and the winters withdraw, they are in a better position to fight. So this is a plan that China has made, and our building of the infrastructure, the rapid commissioning of new bridges that is being done is going to probably bring peace to the border area. Thank you.
Okay. And also, Squad Leader Thakur, at the end of the day, do you believe these sort of projects, this infrastructure push will obviously rattle China, because they pride themselves on their own infrastructure. They think they've been able to, preempt India and startle India by building up the troops, by building these infrastructure projects on their side, by building in, aircraft hangars and, of course, strips for landing and takeoff. But we've also managed to get our house in order pretty fast. I mean, there's been a fast troop deployment, there's been a fast weapon and arms mobilization, which has obviously spooked Beijing, hasn't it?
I don't think Beijing is spooked. They're spooked in a sense that they didn't expect this from us. But they're not rattled. They expected India not to react, and India is reacting. So that's why their plans are disrupted. They know what India is doing. What India is basically doing is slamming the window shut on their faces. That window was there because of India's goodwill, India's trust of the Chinese, India's desire to ingratiate the Chinese, and tell them that we are not a threat to Tibet. We are not a threat to you. Be friendly to us. Now that China has played probably its last few cards, India is slamming that window shut. So we are saying, okay, here is our infrastructure coming up. They have a better infrastructure. There is no doubt about it. And they have the resources. They have the national power to even further spruce up that infrastructure. So they're not going to get rattled, but India is not now going to back down without a fight. They'll understand that.
Okay, Major Katoch, how do you believe Beijing is reacting to these developments? Seeing our tunnels opening up, seeing our bridges opening up, seeing, of course, the fast mobilization of troops, and the fact that our boys are not crying unlike theirs and are very used to this sort of weather conditioning. How do you believe China is reacting to all of this?
No, I think I'll go with Vijender on this. I don't think China is rattled. What is really China? What has happened to them? They are surprised. I'll use the word they are surprised. They did not expect an Indian reaction, especially because they thought now COVID is there, right? India has got so many problems which they are facing with, and they will not react here. Now, this is something which they didn't, which I think has taken them completely off guard. And I don't see any reason why they should have been taken off guard because the indications were already there. The indications came when the government and the Indian Air Force struck at Balakot. People still haven't understood the significance of that strike. Then after that came what happened at Doklam. After these two incidences, I think the blindness should have gone off from their eyes. That this is a government and it is a different India now which will react. So if they still fail to see it, I presume from next year onwards, they would have got the message because there is no way in which India is going to bow down now. And it is up to the Chinese, as I have stated repeatedly, Uday, in your shows earlier, India does not want a war, but India is prepared to fight. There are two different issues. So if it comes to that, well, we'll fight the war regardless of the cost. And not only will we will fight to win. So China must get that message. Now, one of the things is, why these roads, one of the reasons why the roads didn't get through, basically there were three reasons from the Indian side. One is, as Sumit has very correctly pointed out, that ecological business which came in, okay, we require clearance, environmental clearance. Now, it is very easy to infiltrate into the system and ensure that nothing moves because people can take the high moral ground while rejecting projects. So they can say, listen, we are pro-humanity, we are pro-forest, we are pro-life, so don't build a road here. Right? Theoretically, if the Chinese would have captured that area, they would have built the roads 10 times more than that, you see. Then none of these people can come up and state anything. So when it comes to our national defense, I'm glad that policy has changed. You've got to get the road right up to where you want it. That is one. The second reason was there is nobody there. Now the question is, where the Chinese have built roads, there is nobody there. Yet they have built the road, even if for 50 to 100 kilometers, there is not a single soul living because they need to get there to defend and to attack. Now this message, I think, has also gone across very clearly. It doesn't matter if any villager is there or not. You need to build your communications right up. And the third thing is, if the villagers are there, I think our first line of defense must be the border people. And these border people need to be empowered to such an extent, I would say give them priority over even things like Wi-Fi and what do you call FM radio. right? And proper communications than giving it to people in Delhi, because that is our first line of defense. Now, when you come to our border areas, none of these facilities are available. And I think it is a very sad state of affairs. We need to give them these communications, because even many a time on our border with Pakistan, many of the forward villagers, they listen to the radio broadcasts which come from the other side. And similarly, when we are looking at Arunachal, in the forward areas, you're looking at the broadcasts which emanate from Tibet. Now, I think all these things need a reversal. It is not just ground communication which is vital. You see, along with that, you require helipads, you require airfields, and you require your electronic support. So this entire communication system, I think it has to be meshed up. It is not a question of cost or how many people are living there. I think once we get this act together, then you will see the concerns mounting in China, and then they will be really worried. And then when we offer them a hand of peace, I think they will be more prepared to accept it, because they know the consequences of not accepting. But so long as you are not in a position to do anything about it, I think, they can, when you offer them a hand of peace, they will discard it like a thrown away piece of bone or something. And this is something which we need to be very conscious of. Uday.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, how, in your view, is Beijing reacting to all of this? How do you believe they are viewing this infrastructure push, these tunnels which are being opened, these bridges which are being opened, the fact that we've immediately deployed aerial assets, other assets, of course, to forward areas much faster than perhaps they would have presumed?
Well, I'd like to say that the Chinese do not want any such activity to take place. And that's why they've been throwing proposals like, all right, we'll stop our activity. We have done 95% of what we need. And you stop your activity because we have done about 25% of what we need. So they have thrown that proposal. And there have been people on the Indian side who say, oh, wonderful, wonderful, let's do that. And the interests of peace and harmony. Well, I'd like to say that the good news is that so many of us believe in peace and harmony. But the reality is, so far the Chinese state is concerned, the Chinese state and leadership desperately needs a military victory, a major, massive military victory for its legitimacy. The legitimacy doesn't come from the ballot box, and it's no longer coming from high economic growth. Chinese economic growth is nothing to write home about now. Chinese exports are definitely going to fall, and investment into China, like it or not, is going to diminish. It's more and more difficult now for Chinese to operate across the world, including in transferring secrets. So in that situation, they need a military victory to ensure that the public remain committed to accepting the regime in power. That being the case, I think we have to be on our guard. And I would just like to add to what General Katoch and Sumit Peer were saying. Look, the question is, it's very important to find out who were the people who rejected on grounds of environment or whatever these border roads that were some suggestions that were made. Who were the people who for decades and decades have blocked border roads from being made and who misled defense ministers in thinking, oh, if you have less roads, no problem, we have more security. Who were these people? Because the problem is, Uday, we believe everybody is basically a wonderful human being and with the best of motives. The reality is that, as Major General Dhruv Katoch correctly said, there could be infiltrators in the system who are basically doing what these hostile forces want us to do. But the difficulty is in the Indian system, there's no accountability at all in administration. You can block a project for 30 years. One junior officer making one noting in a file, the file is blocked. Some NGO coming from somewhere filing a case, the project is blocked for decades. If you remember in Sunday Guardian in 2011, we talked about how certain NGOs were blocking the Kudangulam nuclear project and with money from outside. I mean, till that time, the Manmohan Singh government was doing nothing about it. And as soon as the item came and attention started playing, on that particular issue, well then, the project resumed. But we lost so many years. We have tons of, billions of tons of coal. We have so much of uranium, so much of rare earths, but nothing of this is exploited because some googly is pulled on us in some way or the other, and these googlies go completely undiscovered because nobody in India seems to worry about finding out why the past is so dismal, why these mistakes have been made, and holding people accountable. So essentially, when you commit this crime against the country, you're committing it in the full knowledge that nothing is going to happen to you.
Sumit, you were also talking, of course, about the past, so you can weigh in on what Professor Nalapur just said. But how, in your assessment, Sumit, what is the mood in Beijing right now? What's the mood in China reacting to our strategy so far?
I think, Vinny, if you look at the Chinese culture, these people either go by those Shinzu doctrines or they go by their past experience. So this time around, the Shinzu doctrine and the past experience both have failed them, because the past experiences Indians will not, will not show any resistance. Your doctrine of salami slicing will happen and happen beautifully. You can take a few hundred square kilometers of land every year, and it will keep on happening. They thought that you could frighten the Indian and Indians will back out. Indians do not want war. So this is the experience what they had with India. And Indians will still be our friends, and they will come and give us a $50 billion of trade surplus to us, and the business will continue. You take my land, I give you on a platter $50 billion of trade surplus. Your apps will continue to steal data as they were doing. That is their experience, and that is what somebody like Shinzu taught them. But this time around, their experience and their past precedences have been taken by surprise, because this government means business. This government looks at the national security in an altogether different way. And what General Saab rightly said, Balakot and Uri were the first steps where we send the message across to our adversaries. But Uday, the Chinese thought that their propaganda machine is so powerful, just by mere propaganda, Indians will be backed out. They never expected this kind of a resistance. But I think if Chinese were not stupid, they got the message from the Honorable Prime Minister in Ladakh. He said, we worship Lord Krishna, who plays the flute, Bansuri, which is a sign of peace. But the same Lord Krishna carries the Sudarshan Chakra, which is a lethal weapon, and nothing stands behind that. So this was a very, very clear message to Chinese. Look, we are all for peace. But the moment you try to infringe on our interests on our land, the same Sri Krishna carries Sudarshan Chakra, which is the most lethal weapon. So we are out to defend our land. We are out to defend our territory at any cost. Though we are for peace, but not at the cost of sovereignty, dignity, and land.
We're completely out of time. My thanks to our panelists for joining us on this debate.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.